Today I've got somebody very local to Totnes, Dr. Stephen Hopwood. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, thank you.
Right?
Very good.
We're going to be talking natural health, of acupuncture, and some interesting things that have come about in the press recently with regards to Steve and a clinic and a talk he was going to give to Totnes Town. But first of all, let's talk about a bit about your background, Steve. So where did it all begin?
Well, I suppose it began by going to Bristol University Medical School back in something like 1979.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years there studying what's called second MB, which is the University Natural Sciences aspect of the medical degree course, where you study anatomy and physiology and biochemistry and pathology and pharmacology,
Okay.
and all of those sorts of things.
Right.
And so I did that for a couple of years and realised that there was something significantly missing.
Right.
In all of those disciplines. There was no real mention and no real study of the principles of cultivating health.
Yeah.
There was no understanding how you could make people healthier, what the principles of that were, and no sort of scientific investigation into that process. So
Okay.
it seemed hugely lacking, really. All they talked about was disease processes and pharmaceutical protocols and all the rest of it. So health cultivation was something that was hugely lacking. So that sort of inspired me to look further afield, and in a sense one of the more obvious places to look was traditional Chinese medicine, where
Okay.
for 3,000 years, over a quarter of the world's population have been practicing a system of medicine whose core sort of founding principle was that of health cultivation. So
Yeah.
they use diet and exercise and herbs, natural products,
Yeah.
and acupuncture to cultivate their health and longevity.
Yeah.
All about health and longevity, all the Taoist practices, traditional Chinese medicine. So
Yeah.
they've been doing that for 3,000 years. So
Mm.
obviously things don't,
Obviously it works.
you give something up long before 3,000 years if it's not working, really,
Yeah.
don't you?
I mean, we have Clive DeCarl who comes on the show regularly and gives some health tips, and we've had also Scott Tips on the show, and they are always saying that unfortunately the doctors today, the GPs and people going into medicine aren't talked about keeping up with health. They're taught about the pharmaceutical drugs that can assist and sometimes cure, but they're not actually taught about the actual health of a person and natural health. They don't even touch on that in medical school.
No, unfortunately not. So so this is what sort of was fairly apparent, and what inspired me to take a year off and go and study another way, really.
Okay.
So it's 3 months in Peking, and very, very inspiring. Talking with the old Chinese doctors
Yeah.
and being taught all the old techniques, and having access to all the Chinese traditional Chinese medical hospitals where they
Right.
would or hospitals where they treat people with acupuncture and herbs and all of these techniques. Seeing the doctors practicing qigong, in the waiting rooms. And
What's Qigong?
Qigong is Chinese Taoist practice like Tai Chi,
Okay.
where they do various movements in order to cultivate their energy, cultivate
right,
their
okay.
relaxation.
Yeah.
And so yes, it's inspiring for me to seeing fully qualified doctors, practicing this for their health in their spare time in between
Yeah.
treating patients. So it was very inspiring. But what became quite established and grounded in me was the understanding of the principles of health cultivation and the utter importance of employing those principles in a healthcare program
Yeah.
for a nation, which the Chinese have been doing for 3,000 years, and we seem to be not doing, in the Bristol University Medical School. So.
No. And the FDA, I think, have got a massive, well, not the FDA, but the pharmaceutical and big pharma have so much to do with the medical training now today. Would I right be saying?
They do, yes. I mean, they've benevolently offered, funds to support medical schools, and then decided, well, it might be good if we, have a representative on the board, on the committee, just to sort of
Right.
supervise the funds are spent appropriately. And unfortunately, before you know what, they seem to have dictated the entire curriculum, which is inappropriate, really.
Okay. So you've got the clinic just above the Arcturus bookshop upstairs,
Yes.
and you're practicing acupuncture up there, is it?
Acupuncture, Chinese herbs, dietary advice, supplement advice.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine in Totnes you're rather busy, because I like to think Totnes is sort of home to alternative health. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is.
You know, it is.
Yeah, it's very much so. It's got a great reputation for that,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of very excellent practitioners there.
Okay.
And it's well located where people come up from Plymouth, people come down from Exeter.
Yeah.
It serves the whole sort of South Hams region with a train line straight into the middle of
Yeah.
town. So yeah, it's a nice little busy town.
So, running up to the recent talk you were going to give in Totnes, how did you start investigating the subjects that you were going to speak about at your talk and conference that you were going to put on?
Well, in my practice, I was seeing more and more people coming to me asking for help to cultivate their health when they had a diagnosis of cancer.
Okay.
Turn of the century last year, around the 1900s, it was sort of 1 in 10 that would get cancer. Now, well, 1 in 20 I think it was, it's now right to 1 in 10, 1 in 3, and even greater than that now. So,
Right.
you know, it's approaching the point where, you know, 50% of people can expect, you know, to get cancer at some point in their life. You know, which just seemed absolutely outrageous to me. That in a, you know, apparently modern evolved society, you know, we have such plummeting health statistics. But it made me start to look into, you know, what could be done to help cultivate the health of people who had cancer, because
Yeah.
clearly that group of people in our society were in significant need of health cultivation.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to be so unfortunate as to have a diagnosis of cancer and then undergo chemotherapy and surgery and radiotherapy,
Yeah.
your health isn't going to be left in a particularly good state.
No.
So, with all of the naturopathic and ancient and modern health cultivation techniques that I've become aware of in my practice, we decided to set up a Totnes Cancer Healthcare Clinic where
Right.
we were caring for the health of people who have cancer.
Right.
Not endeavouring to treat them for cancer,
Yeah.
but to support the health of people who have cancer. So,
Right.
you know, that was a very important foundational discrimination that we made,
Yeah.
that was reflected in the name of our clinic, Totnes Cancer Health Centre. So we're talking about the health of people who have cancer.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this was very misconstrued by a lot of the sort of media and establishment, and immediately you start to stand up and say that you're treating people with cancer for their health. They translate that into that you're claiming that you've got cures for cancer and that you're treating people for cancer.
Right.
And all the rest of it. So this is where the problems arose, basically.
But there are doctors out there. I mean, I've seen a video by Dr. Brzezinski, who over in America apparently was curing cancer with neuroplastin, so people didn't have to go through the radiation, they didn't have to go through chemotherapy, and I believe the FDA closed him down. Have you heard about him and his treatments?
Yeah, I have. I've seen the documentary, and we had his documentary, Cancer, is it a Serious Business?
Cancer is a Serious Business,
Yep.
yeah.
We have that embedded on our website, and yeah, I think, you know, very interesting research. I mean, I want to make the point here about research, because what you have, you know, in order to prove something, you know, in order to be able to stand up in the public domain and not break the 1939 Cancer Act, you know, if something is to be proved and you were to say something, you know, it has to go through double-blind clinical trials that are statistically verified and cross-reference with other large double-blind trials that, you know, over a number of years, you know, which all come out with the same conclusions in order for you to say something definitive.
Right. Okay.
But obviously, for something to get to the point that the government or the pharmaceutical industries are willing to put the amount of money into the research that's required in order to substantiate the product, in order to make the claims, in order to then, you know, treat people effectively. You know, you've got to get to that point. You just don't suddenly have substance popping out of thin air and think, oh right, we'll spend £10 million investigating that. There's a research period that precedes that sort of thorough investigation, and you know, people like Brzezinski and also Dr. Tullio Simoncini,
Yeah.
for example. Both of those doctors, have been involved in very forward-thinking and substantial research, where they're putting forward propositions about things that look like, that they're very worthwhile investigating.
What was the Italian doctor's name? Because he's the sodium bicarbonate.
Yeah, that's right, Dr. Tullio Simoncini.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an
Glad you
Italian.
said that.
Italian oncologist who, was working in the conventional system for about 15 years, I think, and then through a series of revelations and understandings, started to treat people with sodium bicarbonate with the principle of alkalising the body.
Okay.
Working along the idea that cancer cells seem to thrive and survive in an acidic and low oxygen, poor oxygen, sugar dependent environment, basically.
Right, which unfortunately that's what we're living in at the moment, isn't it? Everything we're dependent on sugar, if not, many to aspartame, but I mean most of our diets is sort of like full of sugar, isn't it?
Unfortunately, this is true, yeah. So Simoncini, a bit like Brzezinski, stumbled across something that seemed to be very effective. He was injecting tumour sites directly with 5% bicarb solution. He was getting people to take bicarbonate orally, and he was also putting intravenous and in some cases into arterial 5% sodium bicarbonate solution into people with cancer, so that he could run the bicarb directly to the tumour site. And he was getting staggering results. He had pre, during and post CT scans where you could see the tumour reducing and completely clearing, and he substantiated these results with tens and tens and tens of people.
Right.
And I can sort of sympathise with him if I was in his position, had been an oncologist, discovered this new way, started treating people, very, very successful results, verifiable on CT scans and all the rest of it. It's easy to get overexcited and to sort of, in a sense, jump to conclusions that you've found, the or a cure for cancer, and unfortunately, perhaps he said too much, and upset a lot of people, and unfortunately got struck off, because you can't make the sort of claims that he was unless you've got statistically verified double-blind.
And it could really also just going off the mark here a bit, but it would mean the pharmaceutical industry could also possibly lose quite a bit of money.
Well, absolutely, and we'll obviously get on to this. Who gains and who profits out of the situation is obviously something that needs to be looked at in every situation. And the pharmaceutical industry is a multi-billion-pound industry, and like the arms industry that needs war to continue, the cancer industry needs cancer to survive, really. And if you were to find a simple cure for cancer, like maintaining your pH at 7.5 and running an alkali system, if that were to work, that would cost the pharmaceutical industry and the multi-billionaires that lie behind it, huge amounts of money. So they're not necessarily going to be interested in that. But Simoncini, I believe, did overstep the mark, and I don't concur with his conclusions that sodium bicarbonate will cure cancer. But in terms of what he was offering in being significant research, that's starting to highlight principles and practices that should be investigated more thoroughly and may well, find their way into being adopted as conventional treatments. I think he had a lot to offer, but rather than listening to the principles of what he was saying, they picked him up on the semantics of the words, and because he was saying that it can cure cancer rather than labelling it as substantial research that should be investigated more thoroughly. He paid the price, really. But I thought that his work was very valuable, and so setting up the Totnes Cancer Health Centre, we decided to run a conference and bring in some various speakers from all over the place to start to have a look at some research. Another area of research, we had the Dr. Hedda Joyce, who came and spoke about mistletoe therapy.
Oh, right.
They're doing
What's that? I don't know.
mistletoe is Iscador. Mistletoe
Right.
is
Yeah.
the plant that we get at Christmas,
Yeah.
which in a sense grows like a cancer on trees.
Okay.
And anthroposophical Rudolf Steiner based medicine systems have been working with mistletoe and Iscador
Okay.
for a long time. In research, they can't make substantial claims, but it has been used and it has thought to have been found helpful in sufficient numbers of people to take the research further. And now up in Aberdeen University, there's a doctor up there who's got himself a chair on the Aberdeen University and is doing research into the use of mistletoe for treating people for cancer, and also at Bristol University.
Fantastic.
So these natural cures are not yet substantiated, but certainly getting interest in conventional circles and starting to get some proper research and proper clinical trials done into these things. So yes, we had Heather Joyce there talking about mistletoe.
Yeah.
Simon Senior was going to talk about bicarbonate.
Yeah.
If Dr. Heather Joyce had started standing up and shouting, saying, we've definitely found the cure for cancer here, I wouldn't have concurred with her point of view. But still, I thought it was appropriate that she would be allowed, at least, to stand up in public and give her research.
Shouldn't people have the right for their own health to go down whatever and explore whatever avenues that they want for their own health? I mean, I'm fully in the belief of empowering oneself and making those own options. So many things are being taken away from us, our rights and everything else, and I think personally one of our main rights should be our health, our own health options, but they don't, governments and big pharma don't seem to like us trying to empower ourselves and thinking for ourselves with regards to health.
No, they don't. I think it, stems back to the principle that they think they own us, basically. I suppose once we signed our birth certificate and transferred legal title of our physiology over to the General Registry Office, they impute that they have ownership of our physiologies, which is grossly inappropriate. But yes, I think obviously people, just because they may have a diagnosis of cancer, that doesn't preclude them thinking for themselves. And that was very much where I wanted to come from and give people information about mistletoe, about Brzezinski's approach, about Simon Senior. So these significant areas of research could get a public voice in the public domain, and people could think for themselves and decide what they wanted to do. But unfortunately,
I was about to get to that. So what happened?
That particular view wasn't. The conference we had, Dr. Robert Verkerk from the Alliance for Health campaign.
Oh, fantastic.
So he came and spoke. We had some excellent speakers. Kevin Wright from Bobby's Health Fund, another controversial character who the authorities don't seem to have valued. He was a very, very interesting gentleman. His son was diagnosed with cancer at an early age, and so he did a lot of research into the various immune system supports and various substances that research was indicating may have an effect in treating the condition. So gave his son a whole range of these natural products, and his son was cured. And he sort of vowed in his darkest hour that if his son survived, that he would set up an online shop and provide all of the substances that he'd found.
And what was his name?
Kevin Wright, Bobby's Health Shop.
Bobby's Health Shop. Right.
Yeah, and so Kevin Wright came and spoke, and what he does now is that if families have a child with cancer and are committed to the dietary regime and alkalising and detoxifying and all of the principles, then he'll give that family any supplement that he thinks they'll need for free, and also pay for some of the expensive medical testing that they need. So he takes the money from the business that he's built and that was inspired by his son's cancer to support other people in the community. It was fantastic. So there was some wonderful people that were had a lot of information and a lot of good hearts as well, really, who came and spoke at the conference. But the powers that be.
I know, this is what I just want to rewind before we get to the conference. running up to the conference, what happened? The advertising of it, and what was the reception, and then the powers that be, how did they get involved?
Well, we got a brochure together that we sent out to people, and we started putting little articles and adverts in the local papers and things.
Yeah.
And there was quite a buzz around the town. People were looking forward to the conference.
Yeah.
Speakers coming from all over the country and all over Europe to talk on this subject and bring forward their research and their opinions. And just basically actually heard from Totnes Times that the town council, on the advice or instructions of Trading Standards, had pulled the venue.
Right. Okay. What was the original venue? The town hall.
It was the town hall.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we were hoping to have a couple of hundred people in there.
Yeah.
All set up to film the event and all the rest of it. And 3 days before we heard that we didn't have a venue any longer.
Mm.
And apparently officers from the Trading Standards had actually walked into the town council offices and implied or suggested that the conference may be in breach of the 1939 Cancer Act, there may be criminal activities that are taking place at the conference, and sort of scared them, implying that they might be legally liable, which is not true.
Mm.
And they're in accordance with the small print in the contract, without any notice or without any reason, they pulled the plug on the venue, which was disappointing.
And then there was Spotlight. I'm sure I saw something on Spotlight.
Yeah, we got on Spotlight a couple of times, a lead article on Spotlight.
Yeah.
They came and interviewed me, and I explained, the difference between treating people with cancer and treating people for cancer, and the principles of health cultivation, and all the rest of it. And then they did a fair article. It was slightly biased, but given some of the performances by the BBC in the past, I was actually not disappointed with the portrayal. The venue was cancelled, and so we had to proceed in a private manner. So we went to we had a private view instead of the event taking place in the public domain, which is a shame.
So since then, what's happened? Since after the event, I presume it went really successfully and people did.
It did. We had a very good outcome, and we filmed it all, and it'll be up on YouTube very shortly.
Okay.
But yes, we made certain links on our website also to various articles, and the Trading Standards asked us to take those down, and it started getting quite complicated because there's all sorts of things that they weren't happy with. So in the end, we just shut down the website, withdrew the brochure, stopped running our weekly workshops, stopped arranging, for our sort of retreat weekends, and just shut the whole thing down. And we've been sort of in communication and waiting for Trading Standards to get back to us, and so we can actually find out whether we're going to face any action under legislation, and whether or not they're going to permit us to proceed with Totnes Cancer Healthcare Centre.
So they've taken. Presumably there were people who. What about the people who are coming to see you for, for their if they have cancer and they want to stay healthy? You can't do that anymore. You can't provide the information and the advice they need at the moment.
That's not true. People are still coming and seeing me.
Right.
Patients are coming in, so that's still happening. But no, it does after all of the hoo-ha look like Trading Standards actually, who now have been pretty good. Bob Pillar at Trading Standards been very communicative and very helpful.
Okay.
And it looks like by the end of the week we should have the all clear to start to reinstate the brochure, start to reinstate the website, and start to run the centre again.
Right, so just keep an eye. Well, hopefully by the time this is aired, the website will be up and running again.
Yep.
A week or so.
Yep. www.totnescancerhealthcentre.com.
Right.
Should be up and running. Although we're going to have to also have some very clear conversations with Trading Standards to work out what we can say, what we can't say, what we can link to, what we can't. because this is all a bit of a grey area really. One of the things that I did on the website was write a small article about turmeric,
All right.
which is curcumin.
Yep.
And there was a BBC article saying that cancer researchers had found
Yeah.
that turmeric or curcumin could kill cancer cells.
Okay.
So that was, a BBC article on the BBC website talking about researchers, looking into this. So I said, well, interesting article. Have a read. Make your own mind up. See what you think. And again, this is research. It's not double-blind clinical trials statistically verified over decades or anything, but it's research that's indicating that these things, may have an effect. So I didn't think it was inappropriate, to point out that this research was going on, or point out, that turmeric.
Especially if the BBC are doing it.
Absolutely.
We're doing a documentary at the moment on the BBC.
Jolly good.
So that's some good points. We haven't found too many at the moment, but that is a good point to bring up, that they are looking at the alternative medicine route.
Yeah.
Great.
So research, being suppressed really. So we need to find out from trading standards, where the boundaries lie really. Because I think it must be. You must be able to link to research articles that make suggestions, without that meaning that you 100% absolutely stand by everything that somebody else may have mentioned in an article that you're linking to. You should be able to voice a spectrum of opinions and allow people to make their own mind up. On that basis, somebody with cancer might decide that they want to take some organic curcumin, turmeric capsules. It's not going to do them any harm. And it might well do them some good, and so this is where we're at, really.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on vaccines while we're in this mode? And more and more we were told that the MMR didn't cause autism in children, and after speaking with various people, Clive, I think one of them, he did come forward and lie, the doctor who was in charge of making the report on the MMR, that it can cause autism in children. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's this tricky area where certain information and certain research suggests that certain things may be going on. If you're going to turn that research and suggestion into a definitive statement to say that MMR vaccines cause autism, then you've got to have a lot more evidence to back you up. So I'm not going to sit here and say I think that.
No.
I can't say that because it wouldn't be logical, because
but maybe it doesn't benefit. Maybe it could have the vaccine could have some effect on some, because every human being's different, and it could affect some children more than others in different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've looked at Dr. Andrew Wakefield's work.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of his videos on YouTube, and I'm editing up one of his talks at the moment that's been given to me. And I happen to concur generally with what he's saying on the subject, and I think vaccines can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
I was working when I was a GP in Bristol with Dr. Mendel, who's an anthroposophical homeopathic physician who looked after the St Christopher's School for Mentally Handicapped.
Yeah.
And there were children there that had developed autism as a result of vaccinations. And it's very sad to see, what once healthy children, in that sort of state as a direct consequence of taking a vaccine. That's the fundamental principle of being a doctor and a physician is do no harm, and I do think vaccines can be very harmful. I certainly, Dr. Wolfgang Woberg, who is the head of health for the Council of Europe, who spoke out very vivaciously about the swine flu vaccination program, and he called it the biggest medical conspiracy in history. He thought that the vaccines were rushed through without being tested. They were produced in cancer labs, and he thought that it was grossly inappropriate that Western governments were spending millions and billions of pounds on these inadequately tested vaccines, for a pandemic that was brought about by heavy pressure from the pharmaceutical industry on the World Health Organization, and it did seem highly apparent, from Dr. Boberg's position, that there was collusion and coercion and the revolving doors once again between high level government institutions like the World Health Organization, and chief executives in these big pharmaceutical corporations, and he was very suspicious that the pandemic was inappropriately declared, and that people were giving untested vaccines that could cause significant harm. And I think this problem of revolving doors between high-level pharmaceutical executives and senior positions in government, where decisions around pandemics are taken, is an area of great concern, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know I'm asthmatic, and I used to line up many years ago before I sort of woke up a little bit, and I used to stand in line waiting because I was told I had to have my flu vaccine every year, because if I got the flu and my asthma, it would it could kill me. And I haven't had a flu jab now. I think this will be the 5th year, and I haven't been ill. My asthma has been fine. I was prescribed steroids and everything to control my asthma. Well, I binned everything. I have a blue inhaler, just as the emergency if I need it. But I haven't been ill since I didn't take a vaccine, since I didn't have the flu jab. But that's just me. So. And I didn't really want to find out that mercury is in all vaccines. Is that right? Is it in all vaccines?
Thimerosal, yeah. So,
and that's no good, is it? Having getting mercury into your system?
No, definitely not. No. Right. And they seem to put it in vaccines. They put it in our teeth. There was a very interesting clip on the internet from the head of the British Dental Society, who was being interviewed about mercury. Yeah. He had to admit that mercury vapor does come off the fillings, consistently, throughout the.
And what can mercury cause? What if you are having the injections and mercury is getting into your system? What trouble can that cause you?
Oh, it's a serious toxin for the body. It affects the brain. The phrase "mad as a hatter" comes because the hatters used to use mercury in the process of sealing the rim on the hat or something.
Oh, right, okay.
So mad as a hatter comes from mercury overdose, but it significantly disturbs the immune system. Yeah, and it's carcinogenic.
Yeah, and then of course we've got fluoride in some parts now in the UK. I know we're okay down here in Devon, but I know some parts of the country are now fluoridating their water. America's, there's just seems to be no hope really over there. All their water's fluoridated. And what's a little bit of background? Well, I've got you here. I might as well ask you all the questions. Fluoride. What are the dangers of fluoride?
Well, fluoride is a halogen, and iodine is a halogen, and chloride and bromide are halogens. They're all in the same line in the periodic table.
Okay.
Now, our bodies have a physiological need for iodine.
Yeah.
The thyroid functions as a result of iodine being its primary fuel. Every cell in the body has an iodine receptor, and it's fundamental for the correct physiological functioning of our immune system. Now, most people are iodine deficient, and there's been a number of research projects that have substantiated that. In fact, the World Health Organization even submitted an iodine deficiency report to the UK government, which they just basically said, oh no, we don't have that problem here, and just returned it without action. But because we don't eat much seaweed is the primary source of iodine. We don't get anywhere near enough iodine in our diet. Unlike the Japanese, who eat tons of seaweed and consume actually 50 times as much iodine in their daily diet as we do, and their health statistics are basically the half or double ours. They have half, for instance, of breast cancer, half the neonatal mortality rate, and a whole host of other 5 years longer, 15-point higher IQ. Because iodine is very important for neurological development in the fetus.
And
if you don't get enough iodine, you don't develop neurologically, and you can develop a condition called cretinism.
Clive mentioned that, actually.
Okay,
Clive
yeah.
Carl mentioned that. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, we used to get called cretins in the playground
Yeah,
at
yeah,
school.
yeah.
Well, you know, that refers to a condition known by Western medicine to be mental retardation in infants due to iodine deficiency.
Right, okay.
So anyway, we have an iodine deficiency, but the point is we have iodine receptors in
Yeah.
our body. And if you don't have the iodine in your body to come along and fill up your iodine receptor, then that receptor remains empty and inactive, and your immune system doesn't flourish as well. But the trouble is, fluoride is a competitive halogen with iodine or iodide.
Right.
And so if we're all deficient in iodine, and then you come along and introduce fluoride into the system, that fluoride is going to go and occupy your iodine receptor site, which is because it's a competitive halogen, and bromides as well. The bromides that we put in our carpets and furniture and all the rest of it, which is another competitive halogen that sneaks into our system and disturbs our immune system receptor sites. So that's basically what fluoride does.
Does it not dumb the brain? Is it not the main ingredient in some antidepressants?
Yes, it is, and because we have a physiological need in our brains for iodine, and the fluoride gets in there. It dumbs the brain down, and certainly certain research indicated that they used to use fluoride in the water in the concentration camps in Germany, and apparently we were able to get away with half the guards, because people were much more docile, much more dumbed down, much less quick thinking.
Right, and I even went into a shop the other day and picked up a bottle of water, and I glanced down at it, and they're even putting it in the natural, in bottled water now that you can, you buy, which you think, you don't want to drink your tap water, and then you look down on a bottle of water, and they're sneaking into the bottled water now.
Yeah, very bad idea.
Yeah.
I was involved with the website for a while, BBC5.tv.
Oh yeah.
And a friend on there, Adrian Connock, he actually rang up one of the government health departments and talked to them about fluoride, and said, well, why is it that you're doing this, and where's your evidence, and what do you think you're doing? And they said, well, it was all down to a York University study that said this, that, and the other about how it was, decreased the cavities in kids' teeth, and how there wasn't any toxic side effects, and so my friend recorded this. You can see the interview on BBC5, and then he went over, rang up York University, and got through to one of the doctors that was on this original fluoride research team, and Adrian said, well, the BBC, the government said this, the government said that, and the researcher said, well, no, that's not true, and no, that's an exaggeration, and no, that's a gross misrepresentation, and in fact, no, significantly more research does need to be done into the effects of water, and if the government has instigated a national fluoridation program on the basis of our report, then that's flawed.
So they can do that, but then they won't allow studies of natural medicines to help cancer health patients. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. They're completely contradicting themselves there, surely.
Well, yeah, but it's another example of the gross contradiction, really. I mean, it is actually illegal to mass medicate the population without, the water companies who put the fluoride in the water, they're not registered medical practitioners, they don't have a license to prescribe drugs to people en masse, so it really is an illegal activity to mass medicate the population, and especially if the evidence for the benefit is marginal, that it really is so marginal, the decrease in kids' tooth cavities, the justification for fluoridating the water in an entire nation is unjustifiable.
I actually got told off by the dentist when I said that we use non-fluoride toothpaste.
Yeah.
She told me off. She was disgusted.
Yeah.
So, but then again, it's because, as well as Clive's mentioned a few times, they're not educated in that part of things. They can't. So many of the dentists, and as we've just been saying, so many of the doctors now aren't educated in natural health and well-being. So.
No, not at all.
Lovely. Well, any advice, last few words on what you're doing and what's happening? Well, what's happening with Arcturus? You're taking down book downstairs, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going to expand. We've got the top 2 floors in the building at the moment
Okay.
where we run the complementary health clinic.
Mm-hmm.
The bookshop owner downstairs decided to move on.
Okay.
So we're going to expand into the ground floor and run a cafe, which will be based on nutritional principles.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't just be a good tasting, food cafe. It will have all of the alkalizing and detoxifying and low GI, and offering
Brilliant.
educational food for people, and all the cookbooks and menus and things.
Oh,
so that, for example, people with cancer who need to eat, a certain sort of diet in order to maximise their immune system. That diet might be quite foreign to them. They might not be used to eating quinoa or whatever. So we'll provide food for them. They can taste it, see that it tastes really good. And they understand how to cook it, go over the recipe book,
fantastic.
and start to sort of change.
So when's that all looking to happen?
That'll be in the autumn. We take over in October and should open November the 1st. So we'll sell supplements, books on cancer, nutrition, complementary medicine, have a little conspiracy corner. But moreover,
like to hear. Well, yeah, that's definitely what we like to hear.
It'll be a safe house, really, is the bottom line, where people can come and get information on a whole range of subjects.
Yeah.
Good food, good company, good conversation, and a good atmosphere.
We'll have you on just before you sort of open it up and
thank you. Yeah,
have a chat about that.
On.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great.
Mm.
So, any last final words on health that you can give people out there? We have Clive on all the time giving some tips, but what can people do just to start now to being healthy?
There's 4 things that I suggest when people come to me.
Okay.
That I offer often as my cornerstones, my 4 cornerstones of health.
Mm-hmm.
The immune system, I believe, to be absolutely fundamental in maintaining our health and protecting us against severe and chronic disease. And so supporting the immune system is vital, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest everybody takes some iodine and brings their iodine levels up to the same level that the average daily Japanese consumes, which is 12.5 milligrams of iodine. So, which is effectively 2 drops of what's called Lugol solution.
Okay.
Now you'd have to eat 50 grams of dried seaweed, to sort of 50 kelp tablets to get that equivalent of iodine a day.
Right.
Or eat 50 grams of dried seaweed, which for most people is just not going to happen.
No. So what are they called? The drops? You can get them in most health shops, can you?
No, you can't. This is the problem. A lot of health stores, although they sell a range of supplements, they don't often actually understand a lot of the principles of the practices that they're involved in, really. So no, it's difficult to get hold of. Lugol, Lugols, Lugol solution, 5%. But yeah, you can get that from my little website, the clinicshop.co.uk.
Okay.
But yeah, 2 drops of iodine will fill up your receptor sites, support your thyroid function,
right, okay,
alkalise the body, and also cleanse the body against infection and parasites. But the Japanese have been taking that amount of iodine for generation upon generation upon generation. So in terms of a clinical trial to substantiate the efficacy of the use, you can't really get much better than a nation doing it for decades, really. So yeah, recommend everybody take a couple of drops of iodine a day.
Yeah.
Also, because we have iodine receptors, and once again those receptors need filling up and activating. So that's one key step. Vitamin D3 is a vitamin that we get from sunlight, or rather we don't get anywhere enough of it. And
told to block them off.
Told to keep the sun out of our system, which is dreadful because we need vitamin D for our correct immune system functioning. So the Vitamin D Council.org is a very excellent website of doctors that have stepped outside the system, done all their homework and research into vitamin D3, and showing all the research, and they say that they recommend that everybody takes about 8,000 international units of D3 a day, whereas the average person in the UK, through their exposure to sunlight, gets about 200. international unit. So they're advocating, supplementing to the tune of 40 times as much as we normally get.
Right.
So 40 times as much D3, 50 times as much iodine is recommended.
Okay.
The third thing I think is very important is magnesium.
Yep. I've just started that.
Very good. Best way to take it is actually magnesium chloride transdermal oil, where you rub magnesium chloride solution into your skin every morning when you get out of the shower.
Okay.
Because it absorbs through the skin a lot better than it absorbs through the digestive tract, and you can take a lot higher.
And that's all right for children, is it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Children?
Yeah, or we can get Epsom salt baths and put Epsom salts in the kids' bath in the evening. That's a perfect way of doing it.
Okay.
Makes them all soft and relaxed and helps them sleep.
Definitely get
Yeah,
some of that.
definitely get some of that. But there's a relationship between calcium and magnesium and sodium and potassium.
Yep.
And most people are magnesium and potassium deficient, so we need to build these levels up to balance our electrolytes.
Okay.
So magnesium, well, like iodine and like vitamin D3, isn't just a mineral. It isn't, it's a hormone and immune system precursor. It's a fundamental building block to our correct physiological functioning. And again, like the iodine and D3, something that we're deficient in to the order of tens and tens of times, that which we should be having, and that which would be, optimal for our health. Because this is another key factor, really. You get when you go to get blood tests or whatever from the doctors, they'll give you a normal range, and that might represent the sort of average level, say, of haemoglobin of somebody in the UK. But being consistent with a national average isn't the same as optimising your physiological needs. Those two things are very different. And so in my practice, I often get people to have blood tests and look at their results, and in terms of thyroid function, in terms of B12, in terms of haemoglobin. The question that arises is not, are you within the national average, but what can we do to optimise your haemoglobin? What can we do to optimise your B12 levels?
Okay.
And start to bring people up towards the top end of the normal ranges, across the board with all of these vitamins and minerals, and it's a substantial boost for their health and immunity, really. But the fourth thing that I recommend as my pillar, my foundation for good health is back to, in a sense, to Simonini, is the idea of alkalizing. Our physiology operates best at a pH, an acid-alkali balance of 7.325, apparently, somewhere around 7.5, which is just inside the alkali range.
Right.
Most people, through their consumption of alcohol and coffee and meat and wheat and dairy and sugar and stress and toxins and dehydration and all the rest of it, run a body pH that's too low, too acidic, and physiologically unhelpful.
Right.
So we are, I believe, a bit like a vegetable patch. A good gardener will tell you that if you want to grow some prize vegetables and win the show in the local fete, you've got to have the pH of that soil correct. You can make a beautiful garden, which looks fantastic, but if the soil is way too acidic, you're just not going to get the cultivation that you want, really. And so, I'm sure that's absolutely the case with us. Our physiologists, we are, after all, in a way, just a bag of biochemicals. All those chemical reactions taking place in our body all the time in order for muscles to move and brains to function. If all of those processes take place inside that optimal pH range, then I believe our health and immunity, our vitality, our clear thinking, stands a lot better chance, really. As soon as the system becomes too acidic, the chance for chronic disease, is going to statistically increase, really. So, and there's another thing, because if our body is too acidic, which most people's are, then what happens is our bones leach calcium and dump that calcium into our body soft tissues in order to try and buffer the acid situation.
Okay.
Now, that's the body's response. Not particularly helpful, but in an emergency, that's about its only recourse. And I believe that the acidity and this movement of calcium from the bones into the body's soft tissues is one of the major underlying causes of so-called degenerative disease. Now, degenerative disease implies that it's just something that happens as you get older. Nothing you can do about it. It's just nature taking its course. But for the majority of things, I don't believe that's the case. What I believe is happening is you've got a severe acidity problem that's been going on for decades. It's causing this movement of calcium from the bones into the body, and so you get hardening diseases. You get hardening of the arteries, which is calcification of the arteries, and they measure the degree of calcification in the carotid gland. There's an index of the degree of atherosclerosis.
Okay.
And so you've got high blood pressure and heart disease and strokes and all of these things that are caused by hardening of the arteries that I believe is actually ultimately caused by an acidic pH causing this movement of calcium. Now, when you combine that situation with a magnesium and a vitamin D3 deficiency, then you're looking at problems really, because you need the magnesium to dissolve the calcium and you need the D3 to drive that calcium back into the bones. So if you alkalise and then give magnesium and D3, then I believe you're starting to have a go at unwinding these core physiological imbalances that I believe are driving.
We can't forget vitamin C either, can we? Because we don't produce our own vitamin C, do we?
Exactly. Yeah. No, we're physiologically defunct in that sense. We've lost the gene. We've lost the capacity to do so. Animals make their own ascorbic acid. And I think absolutely it's vital to take vitamin C every day. In fact, it's best to take it twice a day because it's a water-soluble vitamin. Take it in the morning, you get a peak, and it drops off. Take it in the evening, you get a secondary peak. So at least 1,000, if not 2,000 milligrams.
I take 2,500.
Yeah, I think 2,000 twice a day, so 4 grams a day. Dr. Brownstein is one of my teachers, the iodine specialist. He takes 2 grams of vitamin C twice daily. And I think that's
but the ones you get from the high street mainstream health shop, that's more of that is a proper vitamin C. They're not proper vitamins that they come out because I'm sure at the bottom it says equivalent.
Yeah.
For the mainstream health shop, I mean it isn't really.
Well,
it says on the tin, is it?
We've got a lot of synthesised vitamins.
That's it, really. Synthesised, the word I was looking for.
Yeah. So once again, that which is chemically, artificially, pharmaceutically synthesised is never going to be as good as that which is.
So back to your old traditional health shops, which are selling the real deal.
Very important to have a good look at what it is that you're buying every time.
Okay, and I don't know how much time you've got left. It doesn't say. But just while we're here, Codex Alimentarius, do you know much about it? We have talked about this quite a lot.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's come back into this. Came into force. I think it was May 2010, was it, or 2011, that we had to start getting ready for it to be improvised into this country. In America, it's hitting hard. People are getting arrested. They've even got into a raw milk shop, a health shop which was selling raw milk with guns and armed police going in because they're such a threat. What do you see? How do you see it kicking off over here, Steve?
Well, I see it as Codex Alimentarius Commission and the EU. There's two bodies that are bringing in legislation against health products, really. It's not just Codex, it's the EU as well. But it's the phrase is often boiling frogs. Have you heard this before?
Yeah.
If you put a frog in cold water and put the heat on slowly and warm it up very, very slowly, you'll cook the frog. If you put the frog in hot water, it will jump straight out. So what they've done with Codex is incrementally over the years they've brought in one small piecemeal piece of legislation followed by another. They've banned colloidal silver. They've banned stevia. Every incremental step wouldn't in itself be sufficient to spark a revolution, but obviously you start to look at the bigger picture, and once again, we've got this collusion and coercion between senior members of chief executives of pharmaceutical corporations and supposedly independent government organisations where legislation is being brought in favour of the pharmaceutical industry. They're forcing every product to be licensed. The licenses cost £50,000. You have to sort of £10,000 per annum to renew the license.
It's really just giving an open door to the big companies, isn't it, really?
It's giving a de facto monopoly to the pharmaceutical industry, because they're the only people that can afford with their resources to license various products, and so that will give them a consolidated monopoly over our health, really.
Yeah.
And given their track record, it certainly doesn't appear that working in the best interests of our health is their primary objective. It seems absolutely apparent that making yet more money, it is at the expense of our health, is actually where they're coming from.
Making sickness compulsory is a term I keep hearing. So keeping people sick, big business.
It is big business. Yeah.
Shame. Well, thank you very much for sparing some time with us today.
You're welcome, Lou.
This is going to be played out after the Economic Hitman Tour, which Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert have just agreed to come and join us in Manchester and in London. But this is going to be going out after the fact. It's going to be going out the day after. So I'm hopefully going to be able to grab an interview. I'll take my little dictaphone. And hopefully next week's show I'll be able to play out an interview with either Max or Stacey, or John Perkins, the Economic Hitman, as well, or maybe all of them if I can persuade them. So thanks for having us again, and we'll speak to you next week. Thanks, bye bye.
Thank you, Lou.